Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really profound concept from Steve Chandler's book, 100 Ways to Motivate Yourself. We're looking at something he calls the silent architecture of self-motivation. And honestly, it revolves around what might sound like completely counterintuitive advice. Basically, the absolute vital necessity of doing, well, absolutely nothing. So let's discover why this is actually a total game changer. Okay, let's dive into this. Chandler points out that in his motivation seminars, people constantly ask him this highly relatable, completely universal question. Why is it that I get my best ideas when I'm in the shower? Think about it for a second. We've all been there, right? You're just washing your hair, staring blankly at the tiles, and suddenly, boom! The solution to a problem you've been stuck on for days literally just materializes out of nowhere. An incredible new idea for a project suddenly makes perfect sense. So what's going on? Is there something magical in the steam? Does the hot water stimulate blood flow to the brain? Well, the answer is actually a pretty stark realization. It has absolutely nothing to do with the hot water. It's simply because the shower is the one and only time in our entire day when we are completely, genuinely alone. When Chandler gets asked this shower question, he turns it around and asks, when else during your day are you alone with yourself without any distractions? And if we're being totally honest with ourselves, the answer is usually never. The shower is essentially the last isolated sanctuary in our modern lives that's completely free from that daily barrage of external inputs. And this brilliantly illustrates a really beautiful concept from the philosopher Plato, who said, thinking is the soul talking to itself. Just let the philosophical weight of that sink in for a moment. True thinking isn't just you processing outside information. It's an internal dialogue. It's the absolute deepest part of who you are trying to communicate with your conscious mind. But here's the really critical problem we face today. If the soul is trying to talk to itself, it desperately needs a quiet room to be heard. I mean, if there's a loud, raging party going on in your mind constantly, that quiet internal voice doesn't stand a chance. Now, contrast that complete, peaceful solitude of the shower with our daily modern distractions. Honestly, from the exact moment we wake up, we're just bombarded. It's screens, traffic, the relentless pinging of notifications, the radio, family, even our pets. We're constantly surrounded by things that demand our immediate attention. This overwhelming wall of noise actively stops our minds from being able to sit down and converse with themselves. We are literally drowning out Plato's concept of the soul talking to itself with pure, unadulterated distraction. In fact, our addiction to all these distractions has gotten so severe that the prospect of just sitting alone is actually kind of terrifying to a lot of people. Chandler points out this incredible irony. People genuinely worry they're going to die of boredom or even panic if they're left alone for any real length of time. We've become so thoroughly addicted to distraction that the idea of just sitting in a quiet room with zero external stimuli feels like being shoved into a sensory deprivation tank. We've conditioned ourselves to need constant input, to the point where the absence of that noise feels unnatural, uncomfortable, and just deeply unsettling. But this isn't just some modern smartphone problem. Look at this historical wisdom from the philosopher Blaise Pascal. Centuries ago, long before the internet, he observed, all of man's troubles stem from his inability to sit alone quietly in a room for any length of time. Even way back then, the human urge to escape our own silent company was recognized as the root cause of our miseries. We'd honestly rather engage in endless, sometimes totally destructive distractions than just face the quiet reality of our own minds. Now, what's really interesting about this is the sheer weight of Pascal's phrasing. Notice he did not say some of man's troubles, he said all. That is an absolute, uncompromising warning. It implies that every mistake, every piece of unnecessary drama, every misguided pursuit we chase after in life comes from this frantic, desperate need to avoid sitting quietly with ourselves. We literally create chaos simply because we cannot endure the silence. Chandler really wants us to process the absolute nature of this warning. Because if the inability to sit quietly is the root of all troubles, well, then learning to sit quietly must be the ultimate solution. When we refuse to sit quietly, we fall victim to a really fascinating psychological state called psychic entropy. It's essentially this exhausting seesaw mood swing between boredom and anxiety, and it's caused by allowing yourself to become confused by massive input. Think about how draining that is. You're constantly bouncing back and forth. You're bored, so you seek out a massive hit of stimulation. Scrolling, watching, consuming. But that input quickly overwhelms you, which causes a huge spike in anxiety and confusion. So you shut down, get bored all over again, and the seesaw tips right back. Massive input literally destroys your mental clarity. So what's the guaranteed recipe for all that confusion? Well, it's being perpetually busy. It's being permanently glued to your cell phone. It's being out in the loud, crazy world all day long with absolutely zero time to reflect. If you combine these ingredients, I guarantee you'll eventually lose sight of who you really are and what actually matters to you. But thankfully, there is a cure. And as Chandler notes, it's simple, it's completely painless, and it's 100% free. Let's look at these profound, grounding words from Franz Kafka. He wrote, "Remain sitting at your table and listen. Do not even listen, simply wait. Do not even wait. Be quiet, still, and solitary. The world will freely offer itself to you to be unmasked. It has no choice. It will roll in ecstasy at your feet. You don't need to fight the world to understand it. You just need to temporarily remove yourself from it. You just need to be still." Which brings us right back to the core premise of this explainer. Kafka's wisdom perfectly aligns with Chandler's main thesis. True motivation only ever comes from within. You can't buy it, you can't borrow it from a viral social media feed, and you definitely can't absorb it just by constantly watching other people succeed. It has to rise up from your own internal foundation. And being alone with ourselves, actually enduring that initial awkward discomfort of the silence, will always give us motivating ideas if we just stay with the process long enough. The silence isn't empty, guys. It's just waiting to be filled with your true inner voice. So the crucial point is that it comes down to a really stark choice. In today's information-rich, hyper-interactive world, you are either living your own dream or you're living someone else's. There's no middle ground here. And here's the harsh reality Chandler points out. Unless you actually give your own dream the time and the quiet space it desperately needs to formulate itself, unless you sit in silence to figure out what you actually want, you're going to spend the better part of your life simply acting as an instrument to help others make their dreams come true. Let's move on and see how this builds into something completely practical. Here is your actionable roadmap to reclaiming your mind. First, find the time to sit quietly and be absolutely alone. Just completely relax without forcing any specific thoughts. And this next part is key. Initiate complete audio starvation. No television, no music, no podcasts in the background. Just be with yourself. Watch what happens as your relationship with yourself gets a little softer, a little more comfortable. And finally, simply observe the insights and the hints of true motivation as they naturally start bubbling up to the surface out of that quiet space. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Are you giving your dream the time and space to formulate itself, or are you just drowning it out with massive, confusing input? The next time you feel that frantic urge to just do something to fix your boredom or escape a little bit of anxiety, remember Steve Chandler's advice. Don't just do something, sit there. Turn off the devices, go find a quiet room, endure the silence for a bit, and see what the world freely offers up to you. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Seriously, go find some quiet time today. Catch you next time.